Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 258th annual meeting of St. Mark's Parish. I want to begin with prayer, as of course we always do. So let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with us as we take counsel for the renewal and mission of this your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So I'm so excited that you're all here, and I just want to say a word or two about our business. This is our second online annual gathering here. This year's a bit more complicated. As you may remember, last year we did not vote, and this year we are going to be voting. I'm quite confident that the voting will be obvious to you, but I want you to know that if things get a little funky, we are in good shape here. So you can email us at info@stmarksnewcanaan.org, and Megan Farrell, our always Director of Communications, will take care of you. Or you can put a note in the chat feature, and Jill or Father Justin would love to help you out here. Now, as the business that we would normally do if we were in place at the church, we're going to be doing today, which means there's a few resolutions to get us started. And for those, a poll will pop up on your screen. Jill will pop the poll up. You're going to vote yes or no, or agree or disagree, and the computer will tabulate it. And once we get to 50% of the participants, the vote will pass. One of the issues that we've been trying to convey to folks is that there's one device per vote. So if two of you are tuned into this right now and you both want to vote, please, somebody grab the other computer and go up to the bedroom and see if you can go right to our website and go jump right on, so you'll have time to vote. The initial votings for resolutions will come and go relatively quickly, and then you'll have some time to vote for those on the nominating committee and on the vestry. Again, if you have any questions, please pose them. You can pose them also in the Q&A box, which I believe Justin and Jill are keeping an eye on. So let's have some fun here, folks, on our first second Zoom webinar and our first voting webinar here. So to do our business, to begin, may I hear a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes from last year's annual meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Okay, so please vote in the poll that's going to pop on your screen, and then remember to hit submit. Should have the maestro playing background music while we're all waiting for this to happen. I'm reminded of the Jeopardy background music right now.
Hang on, folks. I'm just having a little technical difficulty launching the polls. Bear with me a sec. All my other polls seem to not be there. How come only my one poll is showing? 16, Victor. Okay, so you know what we're going to do? I don't know why, for some reason, I have all these polls lined up here, but only one is available for me to launch, and that's the ballots. So how about everybody can get a little practice using the chat box? All in favor, just type I in the chat.
This is actually kind of fun.
Yeah, so here you go. I've done it. I planned everything in advance except for this part.
Nice to know that my sister's online. She said I, Dick Sandberg. Hi, Dick. Jane, there we go. Jen Pivorato. So what you're eyeing to is a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes, and seeing all of these ayes, I'm going to announce that the motion carries. The second of these, everybody, let's take a pause here for a moment. The second of our resolutions is to dispense with the reading of the roll of eligible voters. And once again, need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And would you, if aye is your way, please aye in the chat. If nay is your way, please nay in the chat.
Father Peter, while we're waiting for the vote, I would note for the record that we have a quorum. By our bylaws, we need to have 50 participants, and we have on the screen 139 participants. So we have a quorum, super quorum here.
Thank you. Thanks, Stan. The ayes are pouring in once again, and I must say, just as those of you who've first timers, or for those of you who've been around for a long time, 139 participants is more than we normally get sitting in the church. I believe that's true. Isn't that right, Stan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We're now up to 141.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, thanks for those of you who are joining and continue to join. This is the third resolution of our annual meeting. The resolution is to authorize the wardens, treasurer, and director of operations to borrow funds as necessary for the financial stability of St. Mark's Parish. A motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, aye or nay there in the chat box, please. And we'll wait for 70 of those to go by. Catherine Wells, love that. Cliff McFeely, things are good. Okay, seeing no nays and a lot of ayes, all properly spelled, I will say that the motion carries, and that completes the opening business of the meeting, at least for the rector. Stan?
Yes, sir. So I want to thank our departing leaders, retiring officers Mark Thorsheim as junior warden, David Kalal, a treasurer, and David had filled Michelle Ernst's seat following her move. Also want to thank the retiring vestry members, John Michael Bain Cologne, who graciously served this year as Stage Grimes' seat following her move to Virginia, Lise Least, who served a partial term fulfilling Bill Pike's seat, and because it's a partial term, Lise is eligible for re-election as one of our candidates for the vestry. Also want to thank Maureen Mayer, Eileen Kennedy, and Lori Wyckoff, who all agreed to serve a fourth year on the vestry. Really appreciate their time on this. As Father Peter pointed out, last year's meeting, we passed a resolution just continuing everybody's term by 1 year. So thank you all for that. Similarly, want to thank Syra Borsey, Tim Dan, and Jane Hetherington, who all agreed to serve an extra year on the nominating committee. Let me give you a word about the elections before I turn it over to Tim, who has served as the nominating committee chair. This year, we're going to elect 7 people to the vestry, 4 for the full 3-year terms, 2 for 2-year terms, that is terms completing the terms of Stage Grimes and Michelle Ernst, and 1 for a 1-year term, which is the term of Janet Prill, who is becoming a junior warden, and as such does not need to have a vote on the vestry. So, as I say, 7 people total. Lise has been serving the seat that was originally held by Bill Pike. She is eligible, as I said, for re-election today since she has not completed a full term. The nominating committee report was filed with the clerk and mailed to the parish 2 weeks ago per our bylaws. And they included an additional candidate, John Michael Bain Cologne. That was our error. John Michael was not running and is not running for vestry at this time. We do want to thank him again for filling Stage's term. Please vote for a maximum of the numbers specified, 7 for vestry, 3 for nominating committee. Ballots that include more than that number of votes will be disqualified. You must select at least 1 candidate in each of the 4 questions in order to submit your ballot. Keep scrolling down until you have voted on all 4 questions and can click on the submit button at the bottom. Again, as Father Peter pointed out, if you're having issues, reach out to Megan Farrell at info@stmarksnewcanaan.com or to Father Justin and Jill in the chat box. There are tech folks here. Again, once more, thanks for everyone who is standing for election today. You have served the community by doing so, whether or not you are elected. We really appreciate your you're running for these offices. You are truly leaders of our parish. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Tim, as our nominating chair. You're set.
Okay, nice. All right, we've got contact. Hey, everybody, greetings. On behalf of the nominating committee, I want to express our thanks to all the candidates who've agreed to stand for election. If there's one takeaway I have from being at St. Mark's these years, it's the people we have in our parish are just incredible. So these candidates are just amazing. For nominating for officers, we have Senior Warden Stan Twardy standing for election, Janet Prill for Junior Warden, Tim Dan for Treasurer, and Suzanne Harrison for Clerk. Quick note, as a numbers geek, you'll see that the names that I'll read here are listed alphabetically by last name. In the past, some folks have expressed when I've spoken to them that there may be some selection bias in terms of the order that candidates show up. So I've chosen the names that you'll see on the actual ballot out of a hat, so they appear randomly. So standing for vestry, we have Gabby Beecher, Rab Kerr, Susie Kerridge, Lise Least, Rabina Lewis, Kate Mako, Carrie Robinson, Nancy Walton, Severin White, and Bill Wicker. For nominating committee, we have standing for election Jennifer DeLippe, Jill Ernst, Maureen Mayer, Jennifer Palmer, David Park, and Bill Post. For alternates for the Diocesan Convention delegate, Charlene Berardino and Amanda Sutton. With that, I'll hand it over to Father Peter.
Yeah, and I'll launch the poll. Ready to launch the poll?
All right, I can launch it.
Or you want- yeah.
Thanks, Tim. Just a word, it came up earlier in the chat box. Just want to note here as we get started that there's the possibility of nominations from the floor. So this would be nominations from the chat box. So I would like to ask, is anybody seeking to nominate someone else to the slate of candidates that have been put up? Seeing nothing in the chat box, the nominations are closed. And so the annual parish meeting ballot is up on your screens. Just a word about that. So our bylaws call for voters to be 16 years of age or older. They must be baptized members of our world here, be financial contributors to the parish, and faithful communicants. In the old days, there was conversation about attending church a number of times, but during the pandemic, all of those rules have been set aside. There's a question in the chat box about whether or not you can vote from your phones. I believe the answer to that is yes. And there's also in the chat box, is the vote open? I do see on my screen.
Yes, the vote is open.
It's open.
Poll should be up on your screen.
Yep, and we're going to pause and let everybody ponder their vote here a minute before Stan launches in.
I think it's, most people have voted. We'll keep the polls open, but if you wanted to proceed with the presentations, I think that'd be okay.
Okay. I will proceed then, Father Peter. Thank you. It's an honor to serve as your senior warden, and I'm honored to have been nominated for another term. At last year's annual meeting, I spoke about how the clergy and staff had so adroitly pivoted in the onset of COVID. They continue to do so in 2021, and 2022 promises to be another year of pivoting. Looking back just briefly at 2020, we went from in-person services to online services. A record number of people streamed our services literally from around the world. We implemented online programs such as Father Justin's class, but the creativity of our team kept us in touch through phone calls that were made by vestry members and others to reach out to folks to make sure they were connected. Ned did a wonderful job with the Joyful Noise Brady Bunch performances, as I would call. Father Peter talked about the world's greatest virtual Christmas pageant. And other ways we kept in touch in 2020. And as the year went on, we in the summer, early fall, we went to 9 o'clock outdoor services. 2021 started out in the online world. We had last year our first virtual annual meeting, but we actually last year couldn't vote because we didn't have the technology to have secret balloting, the technology that we're using right now. The vestry and other elected officials graciously agreed to stay on for another year. And this was a significant time commitment by people, given the novel issues caused by COVID that were brought before us as a governing body. There were many special meetings that took place in 2021. But early 2021 brought us the vaccines, and later in 2021, the boosters. We were able to go to in-person 10 a.m. service, then an in-person 8 a.m. service, as well as the outdoors 9 a.m. service. Indoor services were masked originally, then no masks. No choir, then choir. The clergy and staff continued to pivot. I will use, as Father Peter mentioned this in his sermon, State of the Parish sermon. I'll use the sports analogy that was bandied about so often in our vestry meetings, led by Brian Hetherington. Our clergy and staff performed like a Super Bowl winning quarterback in the pocket, as the pocket was disintegrating around it, breaking down around the quarterback. Yet the clergy and staff continued, I should say, delivered game-winning touchdowns during that. It was really wonderful to watch them. As you recall, last year we had a moving and inspirational Maranatha House Church program on racism. Least ran one of the most moving spiritual programs I've ever participated in. We had stories of God, stories of race, stories of St. Mark's. Others in our community have been involved in putting on the house churches and other programs on racial reconciliation and recognition. I want to especially thank Father Justin and Lisa Land for their roles in all this. We instituted the Inspired by Love campaign, both annual giving and endowment. As you will hear from our co-chairs, Brian Hetherington and Suzanne Harrison, we have been successful. We have a way to go, but we have been successful. I want to thank Laura Watt for her involvement with this, and obviously Brian and Suzanne for their leadership, but Tom Berardino, Janet Prill, and Don Palmer have all spent lots of time and energy and work on this campaign. In mentioning Don Palmer, his family is one example of the many young families that have gotten so involved in our community here, especially during this time of COVID. They really have stepped up, and really we are very, very lucky to have the involvement of the young families that we have. And thanks to Reverend Elizabeth, leadership of and members of the Newcomers Committee, we have grown our parish, believe it or not, during the time of the pandemic. People who have moved into the community have joined us, and it has been wonderful, wonderful meeting them. We had a program in June, I believe, or late May or early June, welcoming them. Really just was wonderful to see the many new families here, young families, older folks, on how they have gotten involved in our community, again, overcoming the barriers imposed by COVID. Father Peter, Father Justin, and Reverend Elizabeth have brought us the Revved Up weekly podcast that gives us insight into the gospel readings, and also given us insight to the dynamics of the three amigos, as Father Peter called them. You can tell how well they get along, and you can tell why there's such optimism and such energy in our church. It's because of their leadership and their personal interactions. 1 + 1 + 1 is greater than 3 with those three folks. We have others, lay leaders who stayed involved, who have given us time, energy, and their talents for our many ministries, such as Laundry Love, Gospel Garden, the Property Committee, the Investment Committee, the Finance Committee, who've spent a lot of time working, helping us get and keep our house in order. Lectors, altar guilds, flower guilds, many others, and I'm sorry to omit them, but so many people have stayed involved in the church during these difficult times. Also, Father Justin has started the 7th grade confirmation classes, which I think are wonderful too, with Jules's help. And silently, but perhaps most importantly, our clergy provides pastoral care for so many in our communities who are in need of help. And Father Peter in his sermon talked about how David Kalal discovered that we've been helping a family that was a victim of abuse and housing them in Stanford. And that's just one example of the many instances of pastoral care that our clergy has been providing. It's amazing how deep and broad their support is in our community. And finally, as David will tell you shortly, we have been able to not only sustain, but prosper in our programs by in keeping a balanced budget. We have done this all with sensitivity to stewarding the funds that have been entrusted to us to do the good work that is done by the clergy and so many else. Looking ahead to 2022, this promises to be year 3 of pivoting. In November, plans were being made for an an in-person, in-church World's Greatest Christmas Pageant. We were getting ready for a in-person annual meeting. Omicron variant in November changed all that. We did have a memorable Christmas pageant this year, as Father Peter described, and we're having this Zoom annual meeting. But to tell you how we have to keep pivoting, that this annual meeting was supposed to be last week, but we had to pivot literally the Friday before last Sunday to this week because of the storm and high winds that came through New Canaan that would have made it impossible for us to have the 160 or so participants that we now have in this annual meeting. And I'm pleased to say that we are already talking about opening things up, whether it's services and programs. The choir is back, no masks in church, so we're continuing to go in the right direction with that. But again, expecting that there probably will be more pivots that we have to take in 2022. Subsequently, we're very, very excited about 2022. You'll hear from David Shea and George Wright about the return of Mayfair. And as they point out, this will be the first event in New Canaan, in-person event, big event in New Canaan since March of 2020 when COVID hit. As Father Peter mentioned, we're going to have the Let's Talk Race program led by Mark Thorsheim, Lise Least, and others. And that's promises to be a very meaningful operation and event. I also look forward to the successful completion of the Inspired by Love campaign. Its success is key to keeping our 3 clergy members and keeping all these programs that we are providing for our community going forward. And as Father Peter mentioned, it really will be the foundation for generations to come at St. Mark's. So, we thank you for that and look forward to reaching our goals, getting that last 10% we need to do. On a more esoteric level, we'll be coming back to you later this year with proposed revisions for our bylaws. That will probably require a special meeting of the parish. At our last in-person annual meeting in 2020, I talked about how we needed to look at whether we should have a slate of vestry candidates to encourage people to take leadership positions and to ensure diversity on the board and on the vestry. And diversity is not only ethnic, gender, but age and professional, to have folks who can help us with the various issues that come before us. And so that's something that we had identified as long back as 2020, putting together this annual meeting, last annual meeting and this annual meeting via Zoom has shown other weaknesses in our bylaws that we will be coming back to you with. And I might point out that the bylaws that we're currently in place, that we are governed by, were typed up on a ribbon typewriter more than 30 years ago. So it's time for us to take a look and come into this era. Finally, as I indicated before, I wanted to thank our outgoing vestry for all that they have done, especially over the past 2 years. I also want to thank Mark Thorsheim and David Kalal. I've learned so much from them over the past years. They've contributed so much. We really have much to be grateful for them, and I personally have much to be grateful for with them. I also have to say I did learn from Kathleen Corbett and Lauren Clancy before David on the treasurer's side, and from Linda Andros as clerk. I look forward to working with Janet Krill and Tim Dan and to learning from them. And I look forward to continuing to work with and learn from Suzanne Harrison. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David for our treasurer's report.
Good. Thank you very much, Dan. And good morning to everybody. Thanks for joining while I try and give you some perspective on where we stand financially. The Zoom format isn't the easiest, I know, for questions, but if you put them in the chat or if you come to me after the meeting by email or by phone, I'd be glad to answer anything. I guess the lead-in message is a real positive one, that we've come through the pandemic in a very strong financial position. We've had challenges and we'll continue to have challenges, but the parish is financially solid. Looking first at our balance sheet, we ended 2021 with almost $16 million of total assets. Our long-term endowment and our trust assets are about $8 million, half of this amount. And funds already contributed to the Inspired by Love campaign represent another 10%. Again, I don't know if you can see my cursor moving here, but there's the 10% Inspired by Love, 51% that is the existing endowment and trust funds. One thing for accounting geeks who might watch, the accounts receivable line for 2021 is virtually zero. That's not because of anything that's untoward, but it just reflects the fact we changed our accounting policy in 2021 to more accurately correspond to the way that we actually keep the books. I know within the balance sheet, one of the most important things is liquidity, cash. And again, we're in a very strong position when we consider our cash. At the end of 2021, about $3.2 million of cash. 560,000 of that was the preschool, but then $1.6 million capital campaign funds. These are monies that came from, that remain from the Empower the Parish campaign, plus new money that had already come in for Inspired by Love. About $153,000 remaining in the Clergy Gift, $195,000 of other restricted funds. And restricted funds, just to give everybody perspective, certain things are given to the church and they're restricted in terms of by the donor when given. So things like funds that are given for laundry love or for the flower or so forth and so on are restricted. We come down to the very bottom here. Once we take care of all, or account for all the things that are restricted, we enter 2022 with more than $700,000 of free cash available to meet our bills. And this is more than we've had in the past couple of years, principally because we had an outflush of parishioners making their pledges or paying their pledges at the end of 2021. Okay, endowment and trust funds, a little bit more detail here. I mentioned earlier $8 million in the endowment and Lancaster Trust, $6 million roughly in endowment, 1.8 in the Lancaster Trust at the end of 2021. That does not yet reflect the $800,000 that in January we put into the endowment, the first chunk of money that came in from Inspired by Love. To give you a sense of the importance of why this is so crucial for us, as you'll see later, 14% of our budget, of our operating budget, comes from the draw or the income from these funds. So 14% of the amount that runs the church is coming from these investments. That's why building the endowment remains so important to our future. As Father Peter had mentioned, the endowment is overseen, as is the Lancaster Trust, by our endowment commission chaired by Bill Landis. They work with the managers of that fund to ensure that we know how things are being run. One of the projects they're going to take this year is to look into whether or not ESG, environmental, social governance types of investments might be appropriate place to put some of our money. As I mentioned, the monies are managed in two ways. The endowment is managed by the D&B Donations and Bequests group of the diocese. The Lancaster Trust is managed by Deutsche Bank. They both had very good results for 2021. This is really reflecting the fact that the equity market's been so vibrant. As you see over here, about 2/3 of our assets are in equity investments. D&B reported 11.4% total return for the over 2021. We haven't gotten the Lancaster Trust final for 2021 yet, but through the 9 months of 2021, they were ahead of D&B. So we continue to do very well there. Okay, let's turn to our P&L and our income statement. As you can see from the chart on the right, been roughly constant in expenses through the pandemic. And the real challenge that the staff has dealt with so successfully is being able to keep those expenses in line while things were changing and while the needs of the congregation were changing. In 2022, you'll see we've got an increase anticipated in expenses. And that's really two things going on. One, it's inflationary pressures that are affecting pretty much everything we see, be it fuel oil or anything else. And secondly, the vestry decided or approved our recommendation to increase the compensation for our clergy and for our staff to keep in line with inflation. One of the things I want to say in that context is to talk a little bit about outreach. You'll see here we've got a very small line that is the accounting line for our outreach. And this is what we do for Laundry Love and Gospel Garden and the like. This has been a source of pride for us. I think the other thing you should keep in mind is that the bulk of the money we spend for compensation is effectively for outreach, because it is what the clergy and staff do within the community and outside of the parish that is probably the most visible part of our outreach mission. I'll also note too, in the outreach line itself, even though we have not had Mayfair revenues for the last 2 years, we continue to spend a good deal of actual money through Gospel Garden, through Laundry Love, and through the fact that the Outreach Commission very carefully husbanded the resources they had from Mayfair 2 years ago to make sure that we continue to support the organizations we wanted to do. For operating income, this is the other side of the ledger. This is where the money comes from to meet the expenses we have every year. As I noted earlier, the draw that we get from Endowment and the Lancaster Trust is 14%, or roughly $315,000 in 2021 of the money we spent. So again, that's why the endowment is important. It is second in importance only to the amount of money we get through the annual appeal, through the pledges. 2/3 of our money comes in through that source. If you look here, you'll see in 2020 and 2021, those dark bars at the very top of the chart, that's what it's called federal relief on the chart. This is the federal PPP funding, the Paycheck Protection Program. We were able to apply for and receive grants of a total of $453,000 across the 2 years for the church, and another $140,000 in grants for the preschool. The result of that has been that we were able to support compensation for teachers, staff, clergy, and neither the preschool nor the church had to lay anybody off during the bad times of the pandemic. Okay, this slide is really just trying to put the two of the last slides together, putting income and expenses together on the same place. Now note that although we don't have we're still closing the books for 2021. The numbers might move a little bit, but they're pretty much pretty substantially the way you're going to see them right here. We strive every year for a balanced budget. It's been difficult during the pandemic. As I mentioned, the PPP was very helpful for us, but we've not had Mayfair. In 2019, Mayfair gave us $93,000 into the income statement. We normally think of about $100,000 coming in. Our budget for 2022 is for $75,000 for Mayfair. We also haven't had plate collection in the same way that we do during normal times. Normal times, we would expect about $30,000 coming into the plate every year. This year and last year, about 10,000, the right sort of number, and that's where we're budgeting for 2022. And although some of our expenses fell during the pandemic, we weren't printing as much, for example, we still had to heat the building. We still had to pay people, so expenses didn't fall as dramatically as there was pressure on revenues. That's why I think that we really need to shout out to the staff for their ability to keep expenses in line and keep us in a good position. There's one line in here, the clergy gift, that I want to highlight. Over the last several years, we received gifts from some very generous parishioners to help support and fund our clergy. What we've tried to do is to minimize the use of this in any given year to preserve that benefit for future years. But it's there, we know if we need it. When we looked at 2021 and when the clergy or when the vestry reviewed the budget you see right here, we thought we were going to have a relatively substantial use of that gift in 2021. As final numbers have come in through December, it looks as if we're getting more money came in through pledge than we'd anticipated. The result of that is we're going to use less of the clergy gift for 2021. We'll have more available for 2022. And I think that if we were to redo the budget today, we would be able to show you a fully balanced budget for 2022. So again, thank you very much for the generosity of parishioners who made pledges and funded pledges at the end of 2021. And the final line here, a final column I want to give you here is just a perspective on the pandemic, 2020 through 2022 combined. And if you look at all those 3 years, over the whole period, we effectively ran at a balanced budget. We effectively broke even around 32,000, including the 2022 budget deficit. So I think that we can look back and say we came out of this with a pretty good position. Now, the operating budget is only part of what we look at. We also have a capital spending budget. And the capital spending budget is really just what we need to keep the security, keep the campus and keep the grounds maintained. The property committee works with the staff to develop the capital budget that we give to the vestry. Over the past 2 years, we worked very hard to preserve cash because we weren't sure what the effect of the pandemic would be. Last year at this meeting, we showed you a capital budget of about $690,000. We actually spent about $170,000. The major reason for that was the Gray Gables phase 1. The contract wasn't awarded and work didn't really begin to the second half of the year. So this was a lower amount here. As you see in 2022, that will be our major expense in 2022. But we also did defer the stained glass work in the church. We did not get a new truck, so we were opportunistic about saving money where we could. One other thing I want to point out here, we always put a contingency into the budget, the capital budget. Last year, that was something that was needed for the roof leaks. That was something we did not anticipate. We had the money available so that when we went back to the vestry to get approval for the project, we were able to point to the money that would be used. The vestry this year approved an overall budget of $1 million for capital spending. They specifically approved the Gray Gables phase 1, and we'll go back to the vestry for specific approval of any project in excess of $10,000. So all of these are reviewed by the vestry pretty consistently. The one last comment on this, as we go into future years, we've got $1 million in round numbers right now of funds available to fund capital budget. This is the remainder of the Empower the Parish money, as well as the first money that we've got that is coming on Inspired by Love. Between that, the funding of Inspired by Love, we are confident we'll be able to meet our capital needs over the next few years. We also will be able, in some projects, because of the fact that the church has been recognized as a historic site, to apply for rebates or for grants that would fund up to 50% of certain projects. So in some cases, we'll be able to get some money back on some projects. Preschool. The preschool is, as I think you all know, an integral part of the campus and the community and the mission. The preschool provides education that addresses all areas of learning: social, emotional, spiritual, physical, and intellectual. And they were very challenged during the course of the pandemic, but the leadership, the board, and the teachers pivoted consistently and were able to deliver the best learning they could to the children in a variety of ways. I think we all can remember seeing the tents on the Great Lawn when they were going to the classrooms outside. But again, happy to report that 2021-2022 school year went back pretty much to normal. They're now planning for a summer camp. They've had full extracurricular through the year. 2022-23 is fully enrolled. I've got a wait list, so we'll be able to keep the school filled, and they will be able to have a balanced budget, including with some tuition increases. They will be able to pay their teachers again competitively. So the preschool again continues to be a source of pride for St. Mark's. This slide is just really just a reminder for everybody that financial management in this parish is absolutely a team effort. We rely so much on the staff, on so many lay volunteers, and third-party vendors to help us do this, to try and effectively steward our resources. One of the measures of the financial strength of this parish is the talent and the willingness to commit time of so many individuals through so many different boards and committees and staffs. And we've joked often that the property committee, for example, is something you check into and you don't check out. You're there pretty much forever. But I've been particularly lucky in the past year to be able to work with the finance committee and with the investment committee, and both in committee sessions, but also individually one-on-one. It's been great for me to be able to avail myself of those resources, of the people we have there to give advice. And I also want to give a particular shout out here to Jill and the staff, because through all this with smile and with enthusiasm and everything else, they've kept the whole thing going and made it fun to do. And I also want to just mention, not just mention Tim, but Tim has been terrific in the support he has given me and how much easier he has made this job. And I know that he will be a terrific and effective treasurer for you going forward. So on the final slide here, the accomplishments looking at, I think most of the items I've either touched on already or they're self-explanatory, or in the case of modified revenue recognition policy, are probably of interest only to accounting geeks and probably not even that interesting to them. But I think the key takeaway for you is that we have gotten through the pandemic, or the 2/3 of the pandemic we've seen so far, in a solid financial position. We're poised well in terms of where we are and how we face 2022 and beyond. So we will make the slides we'll make available to you on the website. I say not always easy to do questions here, but if there are any questions, just my email's here, just give me a mail or a call and I can go through it for you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David.
And I'm sorry, I forgot my last line, which is I'm now supposed to turn it over to Suzanne and Brian, who talk about Inspired by Love.
Yeah, let me just have a word here before you do that. Thank you for that. I can't help but cut in, and it is really to say thank you to you. Just amazing, fantastic. You have been an incredible gift to us, as I said at the 8 o'clock service this morning. Not only just with the numbers and making sure they're in the right columns, but you have an incredible ability to describe to lay people what is happening with us financially. And as a member of the executive committee, you've been a man of great wisdom and contributed mightily with an incredible number of hours. And we're all grateful to you and thankful, and we're going to miss you. Some of you have heard the joke of when things get anxious, David lifts up his baseball, and that's how we know that the treasurer's got some issues. But anyway, really, really grateful to you. So thank you for your labors. And were we in position, I would do just what you did, was to say a thank you to Bill Landis, also for his leadership of the Endowment Committee. And as you saw, everybody in the slide that was popped up, it's a team game, but we have an unbelievable team. And David, you've been a great captain of the team. And we are grateful for Tim stepping up, and have no doubt that we just go from strength to strength to strength here with our treasurers, but we've had such strength. So thank you for that. Just before I cut in, what Mr. Kalal was talking about here was Brian and Suzanne couldn't be with us, so they've had a conversation amongst themselves, and we're going to watch it here in a moment. So Jill, I want you to bring up another great team that we have.
I'm Suzanne Harrison, and I'm so honored to have served as stewardship co-chair for the last 3 years. This year, I'm joined by my co-chair, Brian Hetherington, and we're excited to give you an update on the Inspired by Love campaigns. I'm pleased to report that our annual appeal has remained strong, despite the uncertainty in our world. I will note that this has been the most energized annual campaign St. Mark's has ever seen. And for that, I would like to say thank you for your support, whether that is monetary, volunteer, or in an outreach capacity. This is an amazing community of kind, giving, and loving souls. The ongoing support and generosity of the parish has allowed us to adapt and thrive as a church and community of faith when we need it the most. As you know, the healing role of our ministry continues to grow, along with pastoral care needs, as we contend with the repercussions of the pandemic and the intersection of race and faith. Thanks to our congregation, we were able to provide the incredible clergy, staff, and lay leaders at St. Mark's the resources necessary to expand God's mission beyond the church doors and begin to affect change in our society. And it is important that we continue this impactful work, but we need your help. The annual appeal is off to a great start. We've raised almost $1.5 million. This is almost enough money to fund our 2022 operating budget, but we are roughly $110,000 short. 287 families have graciously participated, which represents little more than 50% of our parish. We invite each and every one of you to join us as we work to close this gap. At the same time, the Inspired by Love Capital and Endowment campaign continues to gain momentum. And it has been a heartwarming process for both Brian and me to watch so many of you step up to ensure the future longevity of St. Mark's. We have raised just over $6.7 million from 178 families, and that is just $780,000 short of our $7.5 million goal. This is no small feat, and again, I want to express our gratitude for the generosity of this community. But like the annual appeal, we are about 10% short of our goal, and we encourage you to join us as we work toward the finish line. Remember, the Capital and Endowment campaign is ongoing and payable over a 4-year period. It goes without saying that we are blessed with a vibrant church and a robust vision for the future. And as stewardship co-chairs, Brian and I are so thankful to all of you for your energy and support. Brian, would you like to chime in?
Yes, thanks, Suzanne. Really well. So we bring good news to the parish. We're really close to fully funding the important ministries of St. Mark's and the future of our parish. And we are grateful for all the generosity of so many St. Mark's families who've gotten us this far. So in the spirit of Super Bowl week, we're on the 10-yard line and we need your help to get across the goal line into the end zone. So please join your fellow parishioners and give to the annual and capital campaigns. They're the primary funding sources of St. Mark's incredible ministries, and we need your help.
Leave it to Brian to bring it all back to football. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for pulling that up. I love the Brian bringing everything back to football. Just a note here, Brian and Suzanne have done unbelievable work. As I mentioned in my campaign address, we've been at this for 2 years, but I want to shout out again to Janet Prill and to Don Palmer and to Tom Berardino and to Laura Watt. All this team has been inspired by love and have done incredible things for us and with us. And speaking of incredible, wait to hear this team. Man, love it that George and David are going to have a word from us. These two guys are power centers in our community, and they're going to bring some heat. So David, George, have at it.
Father Peter, thank you for the invitation to David and to me to share some of the exciting news about Mayfair 2022 at this annual parish meeting. Let the word go out. Let there be no doubt. St. Mark's is actively preparing to celebrate Mayfair this year, just 3 months to the day from today. That's Mother's Day weekend for those of you who need to be reminded. Friday evening, May 6th, and all day Saturday the 7th. And as my friend, a former Navy pilot, a member of our vestry, and fellow Mayfair team leader would say, this is no drill. Mayfair is an all hands on deck event. And so, as Jesus said to Simon Peter this morning, do not be afraid. I promise you, there is something exciting, rewarding, and unimaginably worthwhile for every single person in the parish to contribute to make this the best Mayfair in recent memory. This 70-year tradition is one of our most enduring and beloved gatherings, not only for St. Mark's, but for all of New Canaan and the community well beyond. And in 2022, God willing, as Stan Twardy has touched on, Mayfair will be so much more than that. For starters, Mayfair will be the largest community gathering in New Canaan in almost 3 years, since the July 4th celebration in 2019. Think about that for a minute. And maybe luxuriate in the positive impact this year's Mayfair can have on St. Mark's and our whole community after the privations of the last 2 years. In that time, the parish has changed, and so has New Canaan. Our personal connections with each other, though not entirely severed, have certainly been frayed. Yet at the same time, our parish community and New Canaan at large has welcomed so many young new families in particular, and our preschools across the town are bursting with children. Mayfair 2022 represents a rebuilding opportunity for the parish, or perhaps, put another way, a reawakening, something to bring us out of our malaise, to bring us together in glorious fellowship, and to help put the very real and debilitating trials and tribulations of the pandemic behind us. David?
Thank you, George. George and I view Mayfair's 2-year hiatus as a recreative moment. To that end, since October, and particularly in the last 30 days, we have reached out to more than 15 Mayfair veterans and learned from their experiences. We have concluded that certain aspects of the Mayfair model were not sustainable and needed to be approached differently. In response, we have developed innovative ideas for streamlining departments while creating new offerings. Our plans range from restoring pony rides to expanding art, children's games, the plant tent, and the food court. Imagine impossible burgers and salads in the food court. For the parishioners of St. Mark's, Mayfair is one of the most formative and uplifting events we share all year, and not just for the parish. Megan Farrell's recent Facebook post on New Canaan moms about Mayfair elicited 462 likes and over 42 comments. This impressive social media response to the Mayfair announcement reinforces Father Justin's observation that the parish and the New Canaan community need Mayfair very badly. The talent pool of our parish is awesome, but we still need your help. We have several important department positions still open. For those of you that are uncertain about stepping into a leadership role, we have an experienced support network with operating blueprints ready to help. Mayfair also needs volunteers to make things go. And importantly, non-parishioners are most welcome as well. So tell your neighbor. Participating in Mayfair, it's a social accelerant for both relationships and friendships, not just as an individual, but for the whole family. Remember, Mayfair does not just happen. George, back to you.
Thank you, David. No, Mayfair most assuredly does not just happen. It takes the entire parish collective, but many hands make light work. Mayfair presents us with a unique opportunity to shed our sweatpants and our leggings, close our laptops, and come into the light with our fellow parishioners and create something very special. So here's the call to action. Go to the Mayfair page on the St. Mark's website, call the church office or contact David or me directly and let us know how you want to help. We will continue to update you on our progress and look forward to seeing more and more of you in church as we emerge into the light and warmth of spring. And remember what we heard just a little while ago this morning in the book of Isaiah. I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send?" And I said, "Here am I, Lord, send me." Thank you.
Okay, wow, thank you guys. I just unbelievable. What they didn't say to you was that they have been out talking to the Mayfair chairs and talking to different people in our community to develop ideas of a renewed and creative vision that is going to emerge with time. Hours and hours and hours of work have already gone into this. And just as our stewardship campaign this year has been revamped simply by hard work and hours of work, I have no doubt that under your guys' leadership, this Mayfair is going to be a thing to behold. So exciting for all of us, and we're really grateful to you for your leadership. So thank you, both of you guys. Okay, so I understand from my text stream that the voting is done and Tim is ready to have a word here. So Tim, you want to pop up and tell us where we are?
There we go. Thanks, Father Peter. The results are in. The nail biter in terms of the officers, the 4 officers standing for election were duly elected. Again, a word of thanks for our other candidates for standing for election. For the second, we didn't have an election last year, but the prior year, in both years on the margin, the difference between those elected and not elected could be counted on the fingers of one hand. So these votes are always very close. I'll revert to reading the results alphabetically. So elected to vestry are Gabby Beecher, Rab Kerr, Lise Least, Rabina Lewis, Kate Mako, Carrie Robinson, and Bill Wicker. For nominating committee members, elected were Jill Ernst, Maureen Mayer, and Bill Post. And alternate diocesan convention delegates, Charlene Berardino and Amanda Sutton were elected.
Thank you, Tim. Wonderful work by everybody with that. I just want to say congratulations to those who were elected, and to assure those who were not elected that you're in a community of love. And you used to always hear me say that I have never been elected to everything at the diocesan level. And so if you're disappointed, I understand your disappointment, but please know that you're part of a congregation of love, and you are loved. And as Tim pointed out, it is always a close thing. Tim, I don't know if you're still on the screen, or Jill, perhaps you can answer. Can you tell us just the number of people that voted this year, so we can have some sense of that relative to perhaps some of our past elections?
We had 147 voters this year.
Okay, wonderful. That's a fulsome number compared to some of the other years that we've had, and I think it's a big deal for us as a parish to have 147 voters. So thank you for that. I want to also thank Tim and all the people on the nominating committee that worked to get people to step forward. Now, as Stan touched and alluded to earlier, not everybody wants to step forward for election because they don't want to not be elected. And so we're grateful to those who did step forward, and to say that's really something for all of us. That's a major offering. I'd also, if you don't mind, just have just a minute of words, and then we have a final prayer, and we can all go our ways. I want to say a particular thank you to Mark Thorsheim, who I wish I could see on the screen, or wish I could put my hand around or have you all see. Mark has served as the junior warden, and he served on the vestry for a long time and served our community as a Mayfair chair over and over. He's lifted a lot of brown furniture. He's slept on floors at youth groups that were made of cement and basketball courts. And he is stepping down to pursue callings in his life. And just to say, Mark, we're incredibly grateful to you for your service. I also want to thank, and I know Stan did earlier, but I would like to just double up on that, Maureen Mayer and Eileen Kennedy and Lori Wyckoff for their service to the vestry, and to say that these people also have brought incredible love and wisdom and passion and equanimity to the governance of and leadership of our community, particularly through these kinds of kooky times. And thanks again to John Michael for his service. I want to thank also the staff. It's just simply to say, I didn't say it this year in my remarks because I was so long-winded, but to say that we are very blessed to have as good a staff as you can find in any church in the country, anywhere. Stan alluded to the three amigos. I can tell you have the best associate clergy anywhere, period. And I had that in my report too, but that got whacked because I just was trying to save some time, but I want that to go on the record. I also would like to say, as I did earlier, again, thanks to you, David Kalal, for all of your service, as I mentioned earlier. And also to note as a community, a sadness that we've had that I would have once again mentioned, but my report was already too long. But I want to acknowledge BP's death, and now Art Sjogren's death. Maestros and leaders of our musical world, BP serving us for 20 years, and Art serving us through a very difficult period of transition from BP's tenure to the bringing of Ned Tipton, which God's grace brought us Ned. and to say that these two people who have died, may they rise in glory, and may the heavens be filled with the sound that they not only have their souls sweetened by, but they are able to contribute to. So I'm also grateful to all of you, all 147 of you who are online, to say that the parish is the people of God. It is no doubt a great parish because of you. Without you, we're a bunch of offices with workers. And so God bless all of you. And if it were possible to have Justin and Elizabeth on the line, I'd ask one of them to give the blessing. And I'm sorry that Elizabeth is probably not capable of that, but Justin, on my screen, I can see your beautiful mug. If that's true, will you pop up and give us a final blessing so that we can all then go our different directions? There you are. I do this with all due respect to Reverend Elizabeth, who is Justin's a compatriot in holy crime, two of the great clergy of the church. But Justin, you're the one who we're going to be able to get. So if you would please give us a blessing, that would be great.
May the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of God's Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. The blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with you now and remain with you always. Amen.
So the annual meeting is concluded. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. God bless you, everybody. Thank you, and thank you again.